Alright, so I'm a huge fan of Pokemon, and like every other fan, when Go came out, I immediately got the game the second it was released. Now, I live in the middle of nowhere, and the closest town is about a 15-minute drive away, so I never explored that area alone. And when I did go, there was normally someone else who knew their way around with me, so I could just blindly follow them and not get lost. So, in other words, I don't particularly know the towns near where I live very well. Since there was absolutely no Pokemon anywhere near my house, I decided to go to the closest town and go on my first Pokemon adventure. So I'm walking around catching a bunch of Zubat when I take a look at the Pokemon tracker. And awesome, there was a Pidgeotto nearby. I followed towards where it was, and it took me to an alleyway with a garage that someone painted, "You piece of shit, stay the fuck out, I know who you are," across it. I always take pictures of interesting things like that, so I just snapped one real quick and went on my merry way. Now, that was weird, but I didn't think much of it. I just figured the people who lived there were having a problem with a thief or a squatter, and it was broad daylight, so what's the worst that can happen, right? So, a few steps later, my phone vibrates and I found the Pidgeotto. As I hold the phone up to catch it, I hear a rapid crunching on the gravel behind me. I turn to look and this fat old scruffy man who looked like a straight hill jack is running at me. He screams, "Now I told you to stay the fuck away!" And I could see something metal in his hand. I forget the Pidgeotto and run for my life. I ran straight for Joby's, which is a store that is a hybrid of a pawn shop, a yard sale, and a junkyard. There are always these big, intimidating, but friendly hillbillies that hang around and work there. So I figured I might as well fight fire with fire. By the time I get there, the hillbillies can tell just by looking at me that something was up. "What's wrong?" the oldest of them asked me. I think he's the manager, but I'm not entirely sure. I explained what happened, leaving out the fact that I was playing Pokemon Go because, you know, technology is evil and Thomas Edison was a witch. "Don't you worry, you can hide out here and we'll make sure no crazies come and get you," he told me. I stayed and looked around at the piles of junk for sale. There was no sign of the guy. So, to repay them for their help, I ended up buying a dog crate from them for about $20. Now, after that ordeal, I go across the street to start heading back to my car. I look at my phone to see what time it is, and lo and behold, the Pidgeotto was still there, locked in battle with me. I took a picture of it, with Joby's off in the background. You can even see all the shit they have for sale off to the right of the Pidgeotto. After all that, I threw a Pokeball at it and the game froze on me and crashed due to the servers being down. I say fuck it and give up and go home. Hours later, when the server was finally back up, I saw that not only did the game register that I caught the Pidgeotto, it also glitched and said that I didn't use any Pokeballs when I did. So, at least in the end, something good came out of all this mess. I go on a jog every night, like many others, just to keep my mental and physical health at a good level and to wind down after work at around 9 p.m. Anyways, a few days ago I was taking my usual route, and now that Pokemon Go is out, there were quite a few people of all ages out and about near the parks, parking lots, golf courses, etc. Very populated and well-lit places. It was nice seeing others outside for a change, especially at night. I'm a 16-year-old girl, so not much more to explain about that. Again, there were people of all ages, including children as young as 5 or 6 from around the neighborhood roaming around. There was also a pretty shady car that was driving around the area. I don't call it shady because of the type of the car, color of it, or anything that would indicate that it was a pedo car because there was really nothing that stood out about it. However, they would drive very slowly when they came around. I scratched the worst case scenarios out of my head because nothing really has ever came from me worrying. I figured it was just someone being cautious because they knew kids might not notice the cars coming in the road, or maybe it was a parent making sure their kid was getting along or something like that. I shrugged it off and forgot about it. About halfway through where I walk, all of the parks and stuff cut off to where it's basically just houses and churches. As I was walking by one of the churches, I noticed a group of young kids, like very young, we're talking the ages of 5 to 7 here, that must have lived in some of the houses nearby, gathered up in the parking lot of this church. I figured it would be smart to keep an eye out for them, plus I was pretty tired from jogging and just really wanted to sit down. I kept an eye on them for about 15 minutes. Then that car I mentioned earlier rolled through even slower than before. Now I was beginning to get suspicious. They began driving up and down the street for a while before pulling into the church parking lot. I began to walk towards the church with 911 ready to be dialed, and pepper spray in my hand, just in case it was a situation in which I needed to intervene. I really didn't know what I, a 115-pound girl, could do, but I figured something was better than nothing if something were to happen. The person in the car rolled down their window and was talking to the kids. They looked as if they were thinking about agreeing on something, turning to each other and exchanging thoughts. I walked towards the car, asking if something was wrong, making sure to keep my distance from the windows of the car in case he decided to grab me. He turned to me and interrupted what they were about to say.
I was just picking them up to go search in a different location. No big deal.
His tone was that of someone who you interrupted during an important meeting or call. That "this is none of your business, get out" tone. I stepped backward and asked them if they knew the man. A little girl in their group looked up and said, "No, we just met him, but he's going to help us find something." I felt the color drain from my face as I realized that my fear for these children was absolutely real. I calmly turned to the man so I didn't scare the children, turning the screen of my phone to where he could see that I dialed 911. He put his car into gear and sped out of the parking lot. I managed to catch the plate number as he drove off, thankfully. I called the parents of the only child who had his parents' number, and thank God they picked up. I explained the situation, and they came with the other parents to get their children. The police looked into it, and apparently the church is the site of a Pokestop, one of the few in the area. The man told the kids he would drive them to where a gym site was and was trying to convince them to get into the car. I really hope that parents make sure to watch out for their kids while they're playing this game. They don't need to be helicopter moms per se if their kids are older, but should at least talk to their kids about the few sick people out there in the world. The game is a beautiful concept, don't get me wrong, but people definitely should keep an eye out on their kids, especially if they're like the ones in the parking lot. To start off, I'm 16 and female, and I just got home after being followed. As I'm sure everyone knows, Pokemon Go has taken the attention of everyone after its release. I myself enjoyed the playing experience of the handheld games much more, but my siblings wanted me to play and I was extremely bored, so I took my brother's bike for a ride. Now, my brother is much taller than me, so when I sit down on the bike, my feet just barely touch the ground, and the seat digs into my crotch, making it extremely uncomfortable to sit on the bike when stopped. This will be important later on in this story. So I locked up the house, keeping the key on a lanyard around my neck, setting off towards my friend's neighborhood as it was an easy 5-minute ride. I was having at least a little bit of fun, stopping every few yards when my phone chimed that a Pokemon was nearby. When I started to make my way past my friend's house, ready to loop back towards mine, a tall man in a hoodie carrying a plastic shopping bag waved my way. I didn't think much of it. Trying to be polite, I waved back. He tried to ask me about my day, but I never stopped my bike to talk to him. So by the time he asked, I was already way too far ahead to say much besides "I'm good, thank you." I rode up my friend's street and actually passed some other kid who was playing Pokemon Go on his bike, and we gave each other an approving nod and laughed as we passed each other. I'm about to pass the busy main street to my neighborhood when I spot him. The same tall, skinny man in the black hoodie. He ran up to meet me and stood in front of my bike, not letting me pass.
"Hey, girl. What, are you doing donuts around the block?"
He was trying to make small talk. I tried my best to smile. "No, just out for a short bike ride in this nice weather." At this point, I put my hand on my pocket as he was making his way to stand at my side, which had my phone.
"Hey, do you mind sharing that water? I just came back from the community center after pumping some iron."
He lifted his scrawny arms up and down, leaving the plastic bag on the ground. I looked at its contents. A gallon of milk, some beer bottles, and something wrapped in a paper bag. I got a bit nervous at this point and wanted to leave as I was quite uncomfortable from standing on top of my bike for this long. But I refused to get off and give this guy a chance at whatever he wanted. Oh, that's cool. I pretended not to hear his question as I didn't want to anger him by denying his request.
That's a nice bike you got. Maybe we should ride around together. You know, my house isn't too far. I live in the apartments up the hill.
Nah man, this isn't even my bike. I'm borrowing it. I have to give it back soon and I can't ride it again for a long time. Not complete bullshit, it was my brother's bike.
What do you mean, nah?
He looked irritated at this point and was reaching for something in his pocket. I felt trapped at this point. He was on my left and to my right was a busy street with cars flying by. But it's not like any of them could see me as the trees at the corner we were on covered us from their view. And I was utterly uncomfortable with the bike seat digging into me. I was about to make another bullshit reason why I couldn't go with him when my phone chimed, signaling to me that a Pokemon was near. At this point, I used this to my advantage. I picked up my phone and pretended to read a text. Oh, man, my sister wants me back. It seems my dad's home. Then I started to ride off in the same direction that I came from. He said something as I left, but I didn't quite catch it. I pedaled fast as hell to my friend's house, flying down her street and skidding into her driveway. I threw my bike into her backyard and hid on her back porch. I was hoping she'd be home, but I didn't see anyone inside. I didn't want to try going back towards my house if that guy was still there, but I couldn't wait long. Outside it was getting way too hot and I'm not used to being out of the house. I have some pretty bad depression which leaves me to sleep all day. Just my luck that the one day I decide to go outside, some fucking creeper finds me. I called up my other friend who lived about 3 minutes away and no answer. I texted another who lived about 5 minutes away. She wasn't home, but her sister was. She has to be. She always is. Her house was pretty close to mine, on the same street that guy was on, but I had to take that chance. I waited about 2 minutes before I flew to her house. Again, throwing my bike into their backyard before pounding on the door to get in. The gods must hate me because there was no answer. I looked up the street and saw the guy wandering around. He was looking for me. I hopped their fence and hid in their yard. I'm sure they wouldn't mind. I spent another 5 minutes looking through the hole in their fence, watching the guy walk up and down the street. Right when he turned to look for me down another street, I picked up my bike and bolted across the main road, almost getting hit by a car, and unlocked my house, throwing my brother's bike into the garage and locking the house back up. I was panting and looking out the window. I've been sitting here writing this for a good 30 minutes by the window and he hasn't walked by. I think he gave up on me. So I wasn't that into Pokemon Go, and after this I don't think I'll ever play it again. I should have just taken a nap like I usually do. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed the video. As you can tell, my voice is pretty gone, so I couldn't make the video as long as I wanted it to be. I was going to explain my recent health issues at the end of this video, but I don't think I can now. Basically, it just got a million times harder than it already was for me to make videos, and I'm really struggling right now. I'll probably just explain everything that's been going on during the 400k Q&A live stream. Please make sure you're following me on Twitter because that's where I'll be announcing when that's happening, and that's also where the questions are going to be asked for the most part. Last but not least, I'm sorry if these stories were pretty tame to you. The game came out only very recently and a ton of disturbing things have already happened. This video was just supposed to be a quick video for you guys since you voted for it on Twitter, but I kinda got sick in between and couldn't include as many stories as I wanted to. I do believe every story I told has a lesson though, and I'm glad that the people that sent me them are okay. Thanks for watching and have an awesome day. Team Mystic.